Hey guys, Scott Roussel, back to Football Scoop podcast. Very appreciative and honored to have Rece Davis, ESPN, joining us today because I wanted to have a special conversation about Group of Five football, the quality and the depth of talent within those conferences. Talking about the American Conference USA, MAC, Mountain West, and the Sun Belt. This year has been on display early on. We're 3 weeks in, had some great games. Rece, I'm going to turn it over to you for 1 second. Is there a team or a highlight or a player or an outcome in the Group of Five the past couple of weeks that has gotten you going, gotten you excited about Group of Five football?
I think the easiest one to point to is Northern Illinois, not because you're rooting against Notre Dame or anything like that. When you see a massive upset, a game of that magnitude, especially with Notre Dame coming off the performance it had at Texas A&M, that one gets your attention. I've felt like that probably, though, the performance that was most eyebrow raising was Boise State against Oregon. Now, that was a loss, but the way they played, if you watched that game, you saw a team that looked every bit Oregon's equal on that night. And, Genty is sensational. I had him as a first-team preseason All-American. And, I think those are the ones that really got my attention. Memphis over Florida State, even though I favor Memphis or Texas State in the preseason as the likely 12th playoff team. I think that was less surprising simply because of the state of affairs in Tallahassee right now. So those are the ones that have really gotten my attention. And certainly, I had Barry Odom on our podcast this morning, and being 2-0 in road games in the Big 12 against the team I picked to win the Big 12 in Kansas, I think has been very impressive as well.
Yeah, UNLV, Houston, Kansas, two big names there, two big wins there. Obviously, they'll have Boise State later, and then a potential conference championship as well. And I think they have Syracuse as well.
Syracuse, yeah, a couple of weeks. Syracuse, and they've got Oregon State, which so they've got some opportunities to build a resume there for sure.
All right, so I'm going to get to really the debate. I'm going to seek your help in settling in a minute with the whole Group of Five playoff discussion and the Group of Five poll, but let's just play this out a little bit, how the Group of Five is going right now and these teams and these conferences. You have, for example, in the MAC, you have Toledo and Northern Illinois, two great stories, right? Toledo just beat SEC, Mississippi State. Toledo's schedule is pretty favorable. They're going to play Northern Illinois. So one of those teams, Ohio is really good as well. One of those teams is going to be up there towards the end of the season. Boise State is fantastic. Genty, I think, is the best player in the country. I think he's phenomenal to watch. Boise State, UNLV are going to be in it against each other in the Mountain West. Obviously, San Jose State, Fresno State, awesome programs as well. Think about the American. You talked about Memphis, Tulane, South Florida. South Florida was 14-13 Alabama, right? And in the fourth quarter, and they've got Miami this week at South Florida. So there's great ball being played. And where I'm trying to get with this is college playoff football, selection committee. They got to pick one right now. Northern Illinois. And I'm not trying to get to who is that one. What I'm trying to get to is I believe when the Group of Five is thriving, it's good for the game and it's good for football. And we want people talking about the depth and quality of football being played at this level.
No, there's no question about that. I mean, you think back over the years when Boise State first arrived on the scene, that was good for the game. When UCF had its undefeated season, that was good because it generated a lot of interest in the game. We had a huge turnout for College Game Day the following year when we went to UCF. So I agree with you. I think it's really it's good because people like underdog stories, right? And I don't think any reasonable person thinks that many of the Group of Five teams, at least maybe in the MAC and some of them, would go through the week in, week out, Big 10, SEC, even Big 12, ACC, maybe grinder, and have the same level of success, the same record. But it doesn't mean they're not good. It doesn't mean they're not really good. And that's almost a chasing your tail argument, because if they were in those conferences, they would have a different budget, they would recruit differently and have different players, or they would have more players. So, it's a thing where I think there's excellent ball being played. The biggest difference in the good teams at that level and the good teams at the Power 4 level, to me, generally speaking, is number of people ready to play at that level. Usually you got a starting 22, maybe a few more, at the group of five level, the better teams, maybe Boise State, Memphis, have a little more depth than that. But maybe the MAC teams have, front line is really good, not much behind it. At Alabama, for instance, or Georgia, they just roll in the next 4 or 5-star recruit that might not be polished yet, but they're ready. So, I think you have to evaluate it a little bit differently. And I do think it's fair, especially in an at-large situation, to take into consideration, okay, it's not the same thing as going through one of the power conferences and losing 3 games. But, when you're evaluating them against each other, which is essentially what's going to happen, among those conference champions by the committee when we're talking about a playoff spot, which, to be clear, before people get caught up on the semantics, it doesn't have to be the 12th spot. That's not guaranteed where they'll be seated. That is just the most likely scenario for whoever comes out of it. There are plenty of examples in recent years. Cincinnati, if they were a 12-team playoff that year before they moved to the Big 12, they would not have been 12. They would have been 4. That's where they would have been in a 12-team format. It's wherever you wind up, and if you're below the 12, then you move into that last automatic bid. Probably made that more confusing than it needed to be. But when you start evaluating them against each other, I think some of these non-conference wins or non-conference performances in Boise State's case is what the committee really needs to evaluate strongly, and not just whether someone has a 0 in the loss column or the 1 in the loss column, because I actually asked a committee member not long ago. I said, was Liberty over SMU last year a little bit of an oversight? And that person was strong in saying, absolutely not. We spent, virtually as much time on that as we did, the 4-5 spot, 4-5-6 spot with Alabama, Florida State, and Georgia. And, I take him at his word. I believe that. That's not the conclusion I would have come to. And I really think it's important as they evaluate these other conference champions to take those things into consideration for a couple of reasons. One, we want those guys to play those games, both teams from outside the group of 5. And we don't want the teams from the Power 4 that play, when Oregon plays Boise State, if they were to lose, I don't want them punished because they're not in the Power 4.
Yeah, no, I'm exactly with you. You mentioned people love the underdog and March Madness. You think about that, and like a Belmont makes a run, you're like, I'm cheering for Belmont. This is amazing. Well, the selection this year will be 5 and 7, 5 conference champions, 7 at large, and so there's going to be the playoff selection committee debating that 5th, group of 5 type conference champion. But I'm hoping, in a great scenario, we have a couple of teams from the group of 5 that are in the mix for one of those 7 spots. I think that would be fantastic. So this is really where I'm going with the group of 5 coaches poll that we're I guess the administrator of this season. This started this summer. Probably one of, if not the most well-known group of 5 head coaches called me and said, "Hey, Scott, we're going to do this. And just wanted to come to you, and I'd like you to promote it, but we're going to actually be the administrators. The coaches are going to do it ourselves." And then he called me about a month later, and he said, "Hey, it turns out we can't do it ourselves. We kind of need a third party. So, can you just go ahead and do it?" Yeah, sure, fine. So it's pretty simple. I offer a poll to every group of 5 head coach every Sunday morning. Got to get the votes back by Monday morning, and we announce it Monday. And with the intent of shining a bright light on the good things happening within these conferences and the quality of ball. And I think that's been achieved. People really like it, but there is some confusion because, group of 5 is part of FBS. So what's going on here? So here's the debate, Rece. I'm looking for your opinion because I believe you are one of the most respected voices in college football, and you talk to constituents from the fans to the conference commissioners to the playoff guys, and obviously the coaches as well. Some of the conference commissioners have called me to say, "Hey, help me understand what's going on here. I do believe what you're promoting is good for the game, but I'm a little cautious that we don't want to further separate ourselves from the Power 4 conferences." So it's not necessarily we can solve it, Rece, but I'm saying, how do you see a group of 5 coaches poll, and how can we best cast this as this is good for the game?
I think the most realistic thing, without trying to be overly diplomatic or too politically correct or anything like that, is that it can be viewed or evaluated as a piece of data for the selection committee about who the best teams are outside of the Power Four. Now, it doesn't mean they shouldn't pay attention themselves. I just mean they can go, coaches poll among those coaches who play each other, this is what they think, right? How does that line up with what the various analytics metrics that I have at my disposal? How does that line up with what I see on the iPads? Which, I'll go on a quick aside here, drives me crazy when I hear people say they don't even watch the games. First of all, you have no way of knowing that. And second of all, it's not true. They do watch the games. Usually what this means when people complain about the committee is you didn't come to the same conclusion that I would have come to. Therefore, I'm mad at you, and you must be A, biased, B, don't watch the games, or C, dumb, or D, all of the above. And it's part of the great thing about college football is the passion of the fans, especially if someone reaches a different conclusion than they do. But I think the poll, to your point, it would be best used for that. And I don't think it creates any further separation because let's be honest about it. There's already financial separation. There's attention separation. There's historical separation. This is going to bring them into the spotlight, in my judgment. Had you rather be number one in something or either number 23 or also receiving votes? Now, there will be exceptions. There will be years when Boise State, a Cincinnati before they went to the Big 12, UCF before they went to the Big 12, UNLV this year, if they, maybe knock off Syracuse and keep going, then maybe they are, ranked in the top 12 of the AP or the playoff selection committee rankings, maybe so. But historically, most years that doesn't happen. So why not provide an outlet that lets people who are really in tune and locked in on this, we hope, the coaches or their SIDs in some cases. I'm sure if we go back to the old coaches poll, somebody who really pays attention, at least saying, hey, this is how we evaluate it. So I don't see that I think it's a little bit of a misconception that this somehow would further the gulf between the two.
I'm right there with you. I'm a big fan. When a group of five program, or really any college football program, is thriving, it's so great for the university as a whole. It's great for the game. There's so many benefits here. We got to just keep telling the good news and sharing, putting a spotlight on all the good things happening in this country. Rece, you were wonderful. I appreciate you taking the time. I hope to see you soon. I'll see you Saturday on game day.
Great. Thanks a lot for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.